Hello, welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, and my series Freemasonry and Satanism, series number 65, part 2 of Dark Majesty, Texe Marrs, The Secret Brotherhood, and the Magic of 1,000 Points of Light. Been watching a little Texe Marrs on YouTube, in particular his conversation with Henry Macow, another book that I did a video on, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. And Henry Macow is Jewish, PhD Canadian author. I think Texe Marrs is Scottish or something, Christian of course. He has his own website and lots of books and talks about all these things. Texe Marrs. Anyways, you know, it's a little bit more illuminating, not to put a pun on the Illuminati, but I think something needs to be said before I continue. There are Jewish people out there in the world, and some of them are called Zionist Jews, who want to rule the world from Mount Zion, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and they want to force a Judaism satanic type of religion on the world. This is according to a lot of stuff I've studied, plus the couple videos I watched this morning with, again, Henry Macow, who published the book Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. And since then, I suppose, well, I watched a video, he published a second book, Illuminati 2. And Texe Marrs has published many books. And as you're aware, what I do is book reviews. So we're not saying, hey, Rick said this, or Rick's telling you that. Because a lot of people have said to me, they don't know what to believe, who to believe. There's a lot of stuff being thrown out there. So you have these Jewish people who are into the Kabbalah, into the Talmud, a couple horrible books that say that the Jews are God's chosen people, and everybody else has to submit and be a slave or die by beheading them. Some really horrible stuff if you start researching it. Now you got a lot of other Jewish people all over the world who, like many people today, don't take religious very seriously and want to be left alone and go about their lives. Maybe 80, maybe 90% of the people of the world that are Jewish are not in cahoots with those Zionist Jewish people. I'm not sure about the percentage. Could be 50-50, could be 60-40. But there is a group that, and they are having something called Aliyah, which is called the Return. They're calling all the Jews to come home. And there is a group of Jewish people, Zionist Jewish, Kabbalah people, satanic, and many rabbis and other Jewish people have written books about the bad ones. And there are a lot of Jews who turned to Christianity, who believe in Jesus. And the same thing with Christians. There are good Christian people who try to believe in Jesus and try to do the right thing, be good people, try not to sin, obey God's 10 Commandments. And that's an interesting thing right there, the 10 Commandments. And then also with the Arabs in the Middle East, does anybody really think that they're all in one religion called Islam, Muslims? Many of those Arabs are Christians. Many of those Arabs are agnostic, atheists, or don't really care about religion. Buddhists, Hindu, Jewish Arabs, many of them live in Iran and don't want to leave. They even gave an award to the leader of Iran for treating them good and running the country good. So the bottom line is what I'm trying to say. Is there is an evil force out there that controls the world. It starts right up there with the Illuminati and the banksters and the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and not all Rockefellers probably. Morgans, and not all Morgans. Just because your last name is Morgan doesn't mean you're one of them. Freemasons, not all Freemasons. But there is at the top of the pyramid, there are many, numerous, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions on this planet that are pushing forward the agenda of this new one world religion. And apparently it has taken over the Vatican. And again, not all the priests are in on it. So I'm making my point here. When I talk about these things, I'm not talking about all of them. When Texe Marrs talks about them, he's not talking about all Jews or all people at the Vatican or all Freemasons or Illuminati people. A lot of people get roped in. Then there's a lot of people under mind control. Then there's a lot of people who are doing it because they're blackmailed or threatened. And some out of ignorance, of course. I know all across the country, like in the USA, from what I have seen, a lot of people appear to be under some kind of mind control. And they've even made a TV show called Zombies. In the downtowns are promoting the New Age, Ascension, Palladians. I've made videos on all this. And I feel that a lot of people have been beguiled, deceived, duped. And they're buying this hook, line, and sinker, sustainability, global warming, climate change. They don't complain about the sky spraying. Maybe they're afraid to speak up. Maybe they're afraid to deal with it. And then they got threats of a pole shift, Yellowstone exploding, earthquakes, comets coming in, asteroids hitting Earth, the dollar crashing, the stock market crashing, the gay agenda. And that's another whole subject there that the more I research, the more insane and insidious is the gay agenda. And again, not all gay people are in on it, but they're being used. But it comes right from the Illuminati, Zionism, high-level Jesuits, banksters, the people who are practicing Satanism and witchcraft. Apparently, according to Henry Macau, in his discussion with Texe Marrs that I was watching today, the Illuminati has rituals 8 times a year where they have to sacrifice a human. Now think about that. And I don't mean there's just one location and one temple lodge or wherever they do it. I'm thinking, there's hundreds of thousands of these groups. They're like every city has a Freemasonic Scottish lodge. Some of them have many. But if they do practice this and have to sacrifice a person 8 times a year in their satanic rituals, that means every city, everywhere that they control, they have to do it. And people get abducted off the street. I'm a little concerned that they're abducting homeless people off the street for some of these rituals. It's crazy. But again, my point is, before I get onto this, reading some more of Texe Marrs' book, when I talk about these people, and I mention Jewish people or something, it's not all the Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people hate this whole satanic New World Order, New Age stuff going on, 9/11, Sandy Hook shooting, the Ukraine and the turmoil, the Middle East and all the presidents who have been killed and dragged through the streets or dug out of holes, and the people are suffering more every day. A lot of Jews are against that. And if you go up look online, Zionism and images, you'll see a lot of the Jewish people protesting and all the symbolism. And a lot of the Orthodox Jewish Zionist supporting Christian churches in the United States are in on this too. They do evil things. pedophilia, homosexuality, all kinds of decadent, horrible things. As per Texe Marrs, who's right up there with him in the leadership of the church, he says he talks to these people, and they are evil. So who are you going to believe? And countries, especially communist countries, it's illegal to say the things that I'm saying right here. And they're trying to pass legislation everywhere else and make it illegal to say anything about exposing all these political evil hierarchy, Freemason, high level now, not all, illuminati. I suspect they all know what they're doing. A lot of movie stars have come forward, broke down in tears and confessed about the Illuminati in Hollywood. But they are pushing forward with this New World Order. They are spending a lot of money on all kinds of weird plagues. Australia antigen, Ebola, Mars, SARS, and hollow point bullets, and putting troops all across the United States, Jade Helm, and all over in Europe. It seems like they're getting ready for something. With that said, Chapter 1, all I did on the last video was the prelude. The Illuminati, Secret Brotherhood of Destiny. And I'm not reading it all. I pre-read it. Anyways, a tall, thin, and gaunt figure moved briskly across the landscape. Of the old campus of ancient and prestigious Yale University. The lithe young man was accompanied on each side by escorts sent to fetch him. So where were they going? The tomb was their destination. Skull and Bones. Yale University. I suspect this is about George Bush Sr. Greeted at the front door of the massive and imposing structure, and giving the necessary password, the two aides ushered their new initiate down a musty corridor into a darkened side room. Instructed to strip completely, the young man obeyed, not uttering a word. A sense of excitement and dread filled every atom and sinew and corpuscle of his being. His heart raced with anxiety and anticipation. Well, you can see that Texe Marrs can write. Alright, moving on. Then suddenly, the room began to bristle with activity. The door flung open and a band of ruffians rushed in, grabbing him roughly but firmly by the shoulders. They placed a blindfold over his eyes and led him out. In and out of corridors and up a long series of stairs and landings. Then, entering a large red velvet room, he felt hands and arms shoving, mauling, pressing his body into what seemed to be a box or a container. It was a crude coffin. Members in black hooded robes, carrying flickering candles, crowded around the candidate, some chanting, others muttering strange and bizarre incantations. Tonight, the leader's voice intoned, he will die to the world and be born again into the order, as he will therefore refer to it. The candidate was ordered to begin his confession as he laid in the coffin and poured out his heart about his sexual experiences and fantasies, as he began to reveal to the utmost depths of his desires and passions. A clamor began around him. And again, as you know, I don't read everything. He was warned that unless he truthfully and completely told all, until he shared every bit of intimacy with his future brothers, he would be deemed to be unfit for service as an honorable esteemed Knight of the Order. His performance obviously pleasing to the assembled members, there was a brief pause. The new man was lifted out of the coffin, and his blindfold removed. As he blinked his eyes and glazed about the room, he was shocked at the scene. He saw before him members in skeleton suits, in red suits, in bloody, torn, scroungy garb, in the ghostly costume. Some wore campus attire, but their heads were covered with black hoods. There would be naked wrestling as he and the other 14 candidates plunged into and wallowed in a mud pile. Naked wrestling. Once in a tower room, he was brought before a mysterious hooded and crowned figure who sat regally on a throne, bowed to the master. I guess George Bush was getting his initiation. Moving on. This is our new brother Poppy, the leader reported. He is a knight. May he ever remember that he is a bonesman and a member of the order. And may he never forget that all those creatures outside the order are barbarians, vandals, and Gentiles. He's talking about people like me and anybody else who's not in the Illuminati or a Freemason or the Skull and Bones. We're barbarians, vandals, and Gentiles. Remember that. It's them, and they don't like us. That's the way it was that night, over 4 decades ago, when George Herbert Walker Bush, Poppy, to his blood brothers, was initiated into the privileged, much revered rank of the notorious, yet powerful, Skull and Bones Society. The Grand World Conspiracy. The Skull and Bones is only one of several key groups and secret societies we will be examining in this book. Among those are the Vatican's Sovereign Military Order of Malta, the Priory of Zion, S-I-O-N, Sion, the Grand Orient Lodge, the Knights Templar, the Royal Order of the Garter, and the Rosicrucians. So this is Texe Marrs, smarter guy than me, and you've heard me keep repeating, there are just hundreds and thousands of these organizations. And, I could go continue on here, people who are Satanists or Church of Satan or into the Kabbalah, Hollywood, the occult. And that doesn't mean all the people who are into secret occultic stuff. I read and study books. I have an open mind. I can probably use a pendulum in fine water. Maybe I could find a lost person. The police departments, forest rangers, they use psychics to find lost people all the time. Crooks, murderers. So I don't believe that just because you study and investigate that it's evil. But there is a line to cross when you join and worship Lucifer and Satan to get further power and grow in those occultic orders. Because even in the Bible with Jesus, he cast demons out of people. He healed people. That didn't make him a evil person. So yeah, it's a kind of a funny area of investigation, but I feel that it's something people should do, be aware of, and understand if there is another reality where our souls go when we die. God, if you will, or angels, whatever you want to call it. And some of them are evil. Like in the Bible, it said 1/3 of the angels were cast out with Lucifer. So at least 1/3 of them were evil. Now, are they incommunicato, and are they sacrificing humans to get some kind of help and favor from the devil, Satan, Lucifer? Now, I realize that's just way over here for a lot of people. But if you watch football halftime shows, Grammys, Olympic openings, Katy Perry, Madonna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga. And you know anything about Shiva, like we saw on Indiana Jones movie, and you study any of these religions, and you read any books and stuff that I've been going over, even remote viewing, which we have several books on that I've gone over, and I've got another one to go over on that subject. So once you realize that other world is real, and that there are people who have gone over to the dark side, which reminds me of Star Wars, Darth Vader, the Emperor, the evil forces. So keep that in your mind when we say that these people seem to have gone over to the dark side, don't want 6 billion people on the planet, want to kill 90% of them, and are living in rich lives off of fleecing and stealing a lot of the world's people's money and resources, and abducting children for sex and murder rituals, and there's an evil force out there. You can think of it as like the mafia. It's probably the best explanation. But their names are right out of the Jesuits of the Vatican. Not all people in the Vatican. They're right out of the Freemasonic Lodge. Not all the people. They're right out of, they've taken over the Jewish religion. Not all the Jewish people are in on it. A lot of the Christian leaders, a lot of people don't believe in any religion. They just took after it for the money and the power. All right, I think I've made my point on that when I say these things. Rick here is not a hate monger and trying to say bad things about people, but I am very much concerned about the New World Order and its satanic goals, which are becoming more and more obvious. All right, including in this category are the Bilderbergers, the Club of Rome, the Aspen Institute, the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bohemian Grove, where Alex Jones snuck in there, took a video, and a lot of our leaders, like President Bush and Kissinger and Reagan, were photographed there, George Bush, and they dress up in long robes, and they ship in gay men for sex under a gigantic owl, cremation a care ceremony, and toss a baby into the fire. The Lucas Trust, where a lot of these New Age books were published by, formerly its name was Lucifer Trust, and World Goodwill. All these groups and many more, which we will expose, are part of one gigantic unified global network known collectively as the Secret Brotherhood. In the past, they have been identified with the Illuminati. Currently, there are 9 Illuminized men who sit on this exclusive committee. Eventually, a 10th will join them, but for now, his seat remains vacant. Once they make a decision to set a policy, the entire apparatus of the Secret Brotherhood snaps together to implement it, like some piece of complex, intricate, and well-oiled machinery. And I think that's how they get a lot of these situations to happen in a lot of your cities, like Ferguson, Baltimore, Oklahoma City, is they have all these lodges in place. And they're sworn under threat of death not to reveal any secrets, and sworn to obey their master commander. So further up on the pyramid, if they want to have something happen in the city, and a bunch of people assembled all together rather quickly, they throw some money at it, and they already have an army of people there, whether they know what they're doing or not, in all these Masonic lodges, and Rosicrucian, and all these other fraternal, secret, mystery school organizations, including the organizations of witchcraft, the covens, which include about 13 people. So you take a big city, how many witch covens would be in that city? And who hands down the instructions of what they should be doing? And when they do show up at these riots or protests or whatever is being organized, they're not dressed like a witch. You wouldn't know it. They're not dressed like a Freemason. You wouldn't know it. They're not dressed like a Rosicrucian. You wouldn't know it. Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta. You get it? All these organizations are like a secret army who have to obey orders, and a lot of them may not know what they're into. But you wonder sometimes when these things do spring up out of nowhere, who's pulling the strings? Who's throwing the money at it? Who paid for those posters? All right. I don't mean to get so serious about it, but how do you explain it to people that this stuff is real? This Jade Helm, where they're putting troops all across the United States with tanks, trucks, and jeeps, and missile launchers, and all kinds of equipment. Arming the police departments with bayonets, according to Ron Paul on TV in a discussion with the congressman. Why are they giving the police departments bayonets? Are they going to be sticking us with a knife? It makes you get a little serious when you learn some of this stuff. So once they make a decision and set a policy, the entire apparatus of the secret brotherhood snaps together to implement it, like some piece of a complex, intricate, well-oiled machine. And think about that. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow, Monday, the 17th of August. This could be a black Monday and the stock market falls like a rock. Intentional. And they have this apparatus and all these military people spread around the United States right now. And all these hollow point bullets and all these other gear that our police departments have acquired by the direction of the federal government, who also is in cahoots with the United Nations to bring about Agenda 21 and a one world order. Even George Bush Sr. said that the United States citizens will pledge allegiance to the United Nations. Will no longer be a sovereign nation. Where does he get off saying that? Of course, he's the guy who started using the word New World Order in his speeches. So the three objectives of the New World Order. The 9 men who now rule the world from behind closed doors do not, at present, wish to have their existence made known to the public at large. What's with that? So they're running the world and they have to keep themselves as secret? So what do they want? They want a world economy that they control. So they've caused all this chaos and mess on purpose so that we'll buy the new economy. A world government. They've taken over all the governments, even killed presidents and other people. And they've caused all the hatred that the people have for their governments so that the people will accept a world government. A world religion. 100 years ago, the communists said they were going to put infiltrators into the Catholic Church and other Christian organizations to discredit them and ruin them and make everybody hate the Christian religion and other religions and the organized churches so that people would accept a world religion. They've set the stage and they're patient. They just take it a very little inch at a time. Just like they did with the gay agenda, marriage and all that. In 2008, it was overwhelmingly against. But they keep doing the propaganda and the marketing and the TV shows and the commercials and the newspaper stories. And they start educating and re-educating the public. And the public doesn't see it coming. And next thing you know, the public hates Jesus and Christianity and wants to embrace the devil and Lucifer religion. How could that happen? How is it happening? It is happening. It's almost unbelievable. These 3 objectives are startlingly close to fulfillment. It has taken the secret brotherhood hundreds of years of labor and dedication to arrive at this crucial juncture point. The fantastic conspiracy revealed in the pages of this expose will soon explode with such force and impact that every man, woman, and child on this planet is going to personally feel the shocks and repercussions. Make no bones about it. when they shipped those jobs over to China after World War II, and now we got 50% of the population, maybe more, on some kind of welfare. They say the United States is up to here, maybe here, in debt. 18 trillion is the last number I heard. They can't send out checks and they're going to close the banks. You could bet your bottom dollar it was all planned well in advance, and they're just probably trying to pick the day when they pull the trigger. And the funny part is none of this has to be chaos and anarchy. When they do it, we could, hopefully, people have a couple weeks supplies of food. It'd be nice if you had 3 months. Know where you're going to get water and stuff. But most people could just sit in their homes and survive and not let this get out of hand into a balloon of a world revolution and mass murder. But if we go along and we just react, it'll be a disaster. That's my opinion. I do not believe that my description of the present danger that now confronts us because of the hidden work of the secret brotherhood is overly dramatic. To the contrary, mine is a realistic assessment based on careful analysis and evaluation of the meticulous research and documentation. The world conspiracy is real, just as the secret society known as the Order of Skull and Bones is real, and the fact that George Bush, President of the United States of America, is a member of this sordid group is also real. I will say that I've been at this research 11 years now. I didn't think I could have a public voice or write a book or make a video. It's a deal I made with myself until I studied for 10 years, read a lot of books. I mean, what would give me the right to go out there and go, this is this and this is this. I don't believe this, I believe this. But I think if you take 10 years of your life and you read every day hundreds of books, I've got about 500 books in my collection, and pamphlets and magazines and thousands of videos and conversations with people, I beat it up to death to try to figure out what's going on. And that was my goal. I just wanted to know what the heck is going on. When 2001 happened and I was in business and a lot of my clients were losing money, people from Argentina to Canada to California to Germany were losing their homes. And as an educated engineering electronic technician, had some college and all that, and I thought to myself, statistically speaking, all these countries, all these cities, all these governments can't all have stupid managers. Somebody has to be causing all this chaos and anarchy. And I believe I've proven it is a fact with the books I've gone over and the books I'm going to go over. The one I'm going to do next, series number 66, which I think is a 66 type of number, 666. So I picked a very interesting subject for that, the next series. And it might just rile some people up. But the truth is the truth. Moving on, instead, I am concerned about a sordid and notorious secret society, page 20, has not only molded and shaped the entire adult life of a president of the United States, but also has been able to gain a deadly stranglehold on the political, economic, and spiritual realms of this whole world. However, the required cannabis bliss ritual, connubial bliss ritual, is most definitely a standard of the New Bonesmen. And on that night in May of 1947, George Bush, no doubt, revealed himself to his fellows in living technicolor. Occultic and gruesome, a harrowing ritual. Coffins, black-hooded men with lit candles, skeletons and bones. These are all grotesque images and reveal to us the occultic nature of the Skull and Bones initiation. And think about that. and I'm sure everybody's seen it. Go to your local large supermarket, shopping center, downtown area where people get together, parks. And how many people have all these grotesque images tattooed on their bodies? Deforming themselves with body piercings. You just have to wonder, is there some kind of mind control programming here? And I'm thinking, yes, without a doubt, because I remember Pokemon. I was raising 2 boys living with me for a while, and 9 and 10 years old. And the Pokemon thing came out. And the stuff I saw they came home from school with was just subliminal mind control. They were altering a whole generation of people, and now you can go and see it. All the young people, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them, and older people now, look like those Pokemon characters. Oh my God, it's crazy. For example, Ron Rosenbaum, in his expose article, The Last Secrets of the Skull and Bones, Esquire magazine, September 1977, wrote extensively of the harrowing and grueling ordeal. And here's some of the things that they did on this book here. Again, I'm not reading everything. Lying completely nude in a coffin, he confides to the bystanding members the nights, the most intimate secrets of his sex life. A naked wrestling match with other candidates in a sloppy and messy mud pile. Fellow members are assembled in black hooded robes with candles as the member shares his life story from a coffin. Hooded robes reminds me of the KKK, which I thought of something interesting about the KKK. I studied numerology a little bit, I want to see what these people are doing with symbols. So A is 6, B is 2 times 6, it's the second letter, so B is 12. C is the third letter, so it's 3 times 6. So K is the 11th letter, times 6, is 66. So KKK is 6666666. Just saying, it is what it is. They do this stuff right in front of our faces. I remember during a football Super Bowl halftime, they zoomed up on one of those satanic rituals. And behind the person was aisle 66A. And I caught it. I go, oh my God, that's 666. Because 66 was there, aisle 66A. But I knew that A was 6 in numerology. So it was 666. And they were doing this satanic ritual during the Super Bowl halftime show. You pay attention, you start catching this stuff. Moving on. A mind-jarring ritual. A mind-jarring ritual. They serve as an intense and ritualistic form of psychological programming. So when you join these Freemasonic lodges and you go through the rituals that I went over with 12 two-hour videos on the Blue Lodge Handbook. So if you really want to sit down and see what they say and do, I went through 4 degrees. The ritual making of a new man. In the U.S. Air Force, I am a retired career U.S. Air Force officer. That's Texe Marrs. I served for 4 years at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, near San Antonio, a major basic training boot camp installation. There I frequently witnessed the dramatic transformation in the minds and lives of young men who underwent rigorous ordeals and tests. And me, myself, I was 3 years in the Army, and I had to go through basic training. And yes, it's a challenge. Luckily for me, I grew up on a farm, and even though I was 100 pounds, My helmet came out to here. I survived. As if by magic, he was endowed with all the traits and characteristics desired by the programmers, those who designed the training program curriculum. So you can train a new person through these military trainings, and they also probably brainwash and retrain people when they join these occultic, fraternal, Masonic, Illuminati, Rosicrucian, satanic groups, lodges, temples. His individuality being assaulted and then submerged, he had become a valued team player. If called upon, he may even give the ultimate sacrifice, his very life. I know when you join the Freemasonic lodges, as we've gone over extensively, you swear on a Bible under threat of death, not to divulge the secrets, and you swear to obey the master. For sinister purposes, by the same type of intense psychological conditioning process, induced in a far different environment, that of a secret society, can be cunningly calculated to serve a more devious and sinister purpose. It can produce, for example, a bloodthirsty terrorist, a mafia hitman, a deluded but fanatical member of an Eastern New Age cult, or a loyal and obedient servant of a conspiratorial and dangerous occult secret society. The George Bushes, Potter Stewarts, David Borans of the Skull and Bones no doubt experienced a similar dramatic and life-turning point as a result of their initiation. So what does George Bush Daddy do? He gets George Bush Jr. into the Skull and Bones to follow in his footsteps in these Freemasonic lodges. It has been verified and said and proven. Worship Lucifer. So they have Lucifer satanic goals. And if you know anything about the devil and signing contracts that you've seen in movies, it's always sinister and deceiving. That's who we have running in offices, and the senators and representatives and presidents and New World Order bankers and banks and CEOs of corporations and churches and popes. The communist is a result of these people. They're the ones who created the communists to do the dirty work and create the society away from capitalism and you owning your home, a car, and a little money in a bank, and maybe your family inheriting your children. They want to put an end to that. Remember that. They want to put an end to your freedom. They want to microchip everybody. They want a surveillance. They want to tell people they want to decide who lives and who dies. What's right and wrong. And it's wrong to be worshiping Jesus and Christianity from their point of view. In the U.S. Army, apparently you can get court-martialed if you start talking about Jesus or Christianity. Why can't you talk about God? Something's wrong there. Isn't there a God? Aren't we spiritual beings? Of course, if you read some of the material, they think if you're non-Jewish, according to the Zionist material that I've gone over, or not one of these fraternal orders, because remember, you're born again when you go through the Freemasonic ritual. So you weren't born before, according to them. And if you're not Jewish, again, not all Jewish people, but if you're not Zionist Jewish, you're not a human at all, you're an animal. To them. The individual's independence, in a sense, is sacrificed on the altar of collective dependency. He then becomes involved in something larger than himself. Did George Bush become dependent and a docile servant of a dangerously occultic secret society? Did he allow himself to become an initiated and cooperatively functioning cog in a heavily oiled, precision-made machine, an international collective whose leadership is bent on world domination. Was it a part of this bargain that he compromised himself as an acceptable sacrifice for the sumptuous seductive benefits offered initiates who are slated to become the globe's top elite? Yeah, they'll dish up a couple little kids for them to have sex with, and then go to the Bohemian Grove and throw a baby in the fire. They think there's no rules for these people. They even have a religion, as Aleister Crowley, whose last name is 666 in the numerology calculator, that you do as thou wilt. Significantly, Malachi Martin, author of the best-selling book Keys of This Blood, which examines Pope John Paul II's grand plan for the Vatican to become the leading global authority in the New World Order, as described President Bush as a servant of the Council of Wise Men. The Council of Wise Men is one of the synonymous for the Illuminati, otherwise known as the Secret Brotherhood. See, all these names mean the same thing. Zionism, Jesuits, Illuminati, high-level Freemason, Rosicrucian, a Kabbalah student or professor, Rosicrucian. It's just so much. Witchcraft, Coven. The symbol of the Illuminati is the unfinished Egyptian pyramid, crowned by an all-seeing eye of Horus, the sun god. And we've all seen this. This is in Texe Marrs' book. The all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. James G. Martin, 33-degree Mason, who is governor of North Carolina and a leading Republican Party bigwig, has warmly praised President Bush's plans for a New World Order. Writing in Raleigh's daily newspaper, The News and Observer, March 24, 1991, Martin said, President George Bush has revitalized the old but timely idea, the realization of a New World Order. So you see, to bring about the New World Order, and I don't think anybody watching this video can disagree, to bring it about, they have to do something to mind control the people, to cause things to be bad. They couldn't just announce it, everybody would disagree. Agree? So they had to set the stage. They had to cause all this craziness like 9/11, Sandy Hook, and many other things. Economic crashes, 2008. And all the other divide and conquer issues. So they have this goal, and so they had to cause all these pre-problems. And they're going to cause worse problems is the more concerning issue here on August 16, 2015. Whatever's coming next is going to be worse and grow worse and worse and worse and worse. So it goes right to the sky. So bad that the people will scream and plead for a New World Order and plead to be microchipped. And they will have done it, and they will be laughing in their back offices so hard they can't stand up, that they have tricked everybody. And it's all satanic. It's all demonic. And then when they do take over, and the computers start crunching the numbers, running through the software programs, and deciding who lives and who dies. And they've got drones. They got to track everybody with a cell phone. The computers in their cars, where they use their credit card. They can turn off anybody's credit card anytime they want to. Debit cards, credit cards. Do you see what's coming? Hope my videos are making a dent in somebody somewhere. It's making a dent in me. I'm learning more. This Martin explained the all-seeing eye on the pyramid and the Latin inscription Novus Ordo Seclorum. This Martin explained is interpreted either as the new order of the age, and the new order a worldly order, or simply a new world order. Now, if there's supposed to be separation of church and state, then why do they have this god Horus on the US dollar? And the pyramid and all the other satanic images on the US dollar. That's not separation of church and state. That's connecting the state with the devil instead of the God who was good, who made the Ten Commandments, and Jesus who was preaching, love thy fellow man. So they want to take away the good religion and give us the bad, no matter what religion you are. Significant facts is that the pyramid and its all-seeing eye was first printed on the US dollar bill in the 1930s at the insistence of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Mason, and his Vice President Henry Wallace. Wallace, a fellow Mason, as well as an ardent communist sympathizer, later ran for president as a socialist. So that's all I'm going to do here today. I'm going to go over a couple other issues on this video. Well, I thought I would share something else from Texe Marrs, a book I acquired a while back. It should be rather interesting for us to review, if not startling to some people if you don't know about this stuff. Mysterious Monuments, Encyclopedia of Secret Illuminati Designs and Masonic Architecture and Occult Places. Look at the size of this book. So anyways, it's pretty spooky stuff. Mysterious Monuments, Documents and Astonishing Evidence. Over 800 actual photographs and illustrations. Look at some of these things on the back of the book. And if you watch any videos on witchcraft on YouTube, or Texe Marrs, or Illuminati, or Freemasons, Rosicrucian, and other little nasties, devils, demons, you'll see a lot of stuff like this. And these monuments are all over the world. I think this one is over there in England. But look at these creatures. And the stuff on the wall, the building. I've done quite a bit of investigating in several cities, and I go downtown, and the gargoyles and the demon faces and all that stuff. I have quite a collection, and I'm sort of teaching myself to be a symbologist, to recognize what that stuff means, like the Green Man. But a lot of people don't know. I'll just read one little bit out of this book here. On page 11, under the watchful gaze of the all-seeing eye. Since the year 1794, when Pierre L'Enfant's Jeffersonian, 1794, Illuminati plan for the New Rome began to be realized, the prophetic destiny of planet Earth has inexorably continued its fulfillment. Under the watchful gaze of the all-seeing eye and the architectural colossus, its astrological heart fiercely beating from its compass rose center, from the District of Columbia, has grown and grown like some ominous Frankensteinian creature determined to conquer. So as a reminder, you know, the District of Columbia is not a state in the United States. It's a sovereign territory to itself. Apparently in cahoots with the banking district in London, And also with the Vatican's property, which is not a part of Italy, a sovereign city to itself, territory. The point is, all three are one. The banking center in London, District of Columbia, and the Vatican property, they're all under some huge corporate entity. Did you know that? Modern illumined man appears to be artist's conception behind this medallion found at Burbank, California City Hall. So they do have this thing for the future. Remember, Hitler was into a super race of beings. And we're all familiar with the infamous, here's a pyramid in Mexico. So these cultures have been around for quite a while. They're promoting. So who are these ancients? Here's the inside of Masonic coiled serpents of gold. Wow, look at this. 2 golden phoenix serpents face each other inside the temple room of the Scottish Rite headquarters, the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. You can see those serpents up on the top. So these people ruling our world, this is serious business. The Georgia USA Guidestones I've talked a lot about are in Texe Marrs' book. It says they want a population of 500 million worldwide. I suppose they're a little concerned about 6 billion or 7 billion. Here's something really weird. The Maltese Temple of Blood in the New World. The mysterious Pharaoh Columbus Lighthouse, Santo Domingo, in Dominican Republic in the Caribbean is rumored to be a satanic killing factory where potentially millions of innocents will be slaughtered in the coming Vatican-inspired Inquisition. They built this in the Dominican Republic. And apparently I've learned about this a long time ago, but somebody was inside, and if you walk down the corridor, they got all these cells, you know, the doors with the bars, and apparently it looks like a gigantic ritual, like temple they had with the Mayans killed somebody. But in Dominican Republic, if you know anything about the voodoo and all the goings-on down there, sex, that famous people fly down there to engage in sex with children and things, according to what I've studied. But look at this building. They say it's supposed to be a ritual killing center, sacrifices, and I suppose demonic being. Republica Dominica. Here's another picture of the building with a light on, pointed at the sky. Apparently the Vatican had this built. And there's something mysterious they're getting ready for, I keep saying. Here we have one on the Mississippi River harbor. I believe I've seen this when I went to Santa Fe a couple times and had to drive by Tennessee, go over the Mississippi River. That pyramidal structure. The Hard Rock Cafe founder. The Hard Rock Cafe founder. If you don't think all this stuff is in cahoots with the evil folks, you're wrong. Look at this guy, one of the founders. His position, his hands, the temple behind him. Then, of course, we had the Conchita Wurst winning the Eurovision, which is like the American Idol, dressed like the head of Jesus in the body of a silky dressed woman. Wurst means sausage, Conchita, female part, singing the song Phoenix Rising with the words, "You can't stop me." So he was half man, half woman. Well, so is the devil. The woman's breast and the man's torso and the goat's feet. Woman's breast, man's torso, and goat's head. That's the same headdress he's wearing there that Madonna wore in her, and Kate Perry and all them was with the horns and the halftime football shows. And a lot of your city squares have these obelisks. That's a phallic symbol representing Osiris, the god Osiris, and married Isis and had a son Horus. 3 generations of bonesmen, Prescott Bush, George Bush, and George Bush Jr. So if you can get this book, The Devil's Lair Discovered in a Curious Chapel in France. So I suppose you can see there's a lot to learn. Skull and bones carving on the exterior of a chapel in France. Just trying to show you there's a lot more out there than people know. The new Tower of Babel, a spiral ascending to Zion, a temple of the reorganized Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Where is this one here? The RLDS Church is a splinter breakaway group from the Mormon Church. And the group's temple is in Independence, Missouri, a small city where the Mormons believe in the latter days. So they have these cities already set up to be centers with these buildings. I've noticed that across the country. Big skyscrapers, big tall buildings. When you go halfway up and you look up, you see this grand balcony with grand doors that open. And every time I see this, I go, man, somebody's getting ready for something. When they announce this new satanic god that comes to the earth, they're going to have their ceremonies and judgments and maybe beheadings at these buildings. Right out of this is too much to even talk about. But it appears to be true. Occult philosopher artist William Blake depicted God as the coiled divine serpent. So you don't believe me? See the coiled serpent behind the lady? That's their God. When they announce the new God, it'll be the Antichrist. They got all these buildings. Here's one in Tokyo, Japan. The Olympic spiraling into an obelisk. So the people with the banksters and the people who are in charge of the world a lot of great stuff to read in this book. Helena Blavatsky, we're going to go over some more of her stuff. The 19th century philosopher whose secret doctrine, I have that book, has inspired many Illuminist architects. And the logo of the Theosophist Society, a Masonic affiliated occult organization. So here's one of their symbols, and here's her. Even the swatch stickers on there. Beth Shalom Synagogue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Pope's supposed to go to Philadelphia next month. There's buildings and symbols are everywhere. And the cash cows and stock market bulls of New York City. So the bull figures predominantly the idolatry of wealth. So they have a lot of things to do with bulls. And there is a demonic god called Moloch, that's a bull. The golden calf, like Benjamin Netanyahu said, America is a golden calf to be fleeced again and again and again. Why? Because she can take it. And we will sell off her assets piece by piece until there's nothing left but a destroyed third world country. Why? Because we hate her, hate America. We're going to make the citizens regret not wanting to be our slaves. Nice guy, that Benjamin Netanyahu. So we know about the bulls and the sacred bulls and cows on the tomb of Egypt's Nefertiti. There's the bull there on Egyptian hieroglyphics. And the bull out there in front of is displayed at the Temple of Athena on the bottom. And old odd-winged creatures on the exterior of the Philadelphia Tabernacle United Church. Philadelphia Tabernacle United Church. Makes one wonder what's going on. You think? Go get this book and read it. It'll blow you away. And of course the meditation room at the United Nations. On the bottom there with the big black stone of iron. And if you know anything about Mecca, they have a big black stone of iron. What's with that? That they all go on pilgrims to? Why does the United Nations have this big meditation room with the same stone that's at Mecca? You might want to ask. You might want to investigate. Gleaming new city of the Illuminati. A gleaming new city of the Illuminati is being built in the oil-rich former USS Republic of Kazakhstan. So they're building a new city to the Illuminati in Kazakhstan. There's something significant about that. Isn't that the whole country? It's right below Russia. Big-sized country. Almost as big as the United States. That the king way back when said, we're going to adopt the Jewish religion, the Kazakhstan's Khazars. And in the Revelation in the Bible, it says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. So is Rockefeller, Rothschild, all these Illuminati descendants of the Khazars, who were very ruthless people, by the way, who took over the Jewish religion. And the Bible says in Revelation, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Who are they? And why are they building a city to the Illuminati for this new world order? Is anybody curious what's coming? Is something coming? According to all the symbolism, we can say yes. All the warnings, the CERN with the 666 out there, the devil Shiva out there. Remember I said that guy, Cochita Wurst, sang the song, Is the Phoenix Rising? Here's a little write-up about the Phoenix Rising. You're not going to like what I'm going to say next. But the story goes like this. When something gets old and you want to get rid of it and you want to be reborn, you have to burn everything down. So imagine the United States and the world being burned down so that a new world order can be born. Get it? Got it? That's the plan. You ever made a sandcastle on the beach? And it wasn't coming out and you had to start all over? You had to mush everything down. And then the Statue of Liberty apparently was a gift from the French Freemasons. And of course this star on her head is probably the rays of the sun god. This ancient drawing predates the Statue of Liberty by 1800 years and shows a New York goddess idol with long-standing links with the ancient mysteries, with the goddess of liberty looking on the Persian Roman sun god Mithras, that's the Roman demon god, sun god, heroically slays the bull. Well, there's a lot of message in this little thing. 1800 years before they put the Statue of Liberty up. There's more to this stuff. I keep saying. So, the Pentagon is the geometric shape honors the ancient god of war, Mars. So we all know that the Pentagon is also a witch symbol. It's always interesting. Aquarius rising. Utopian visionaries create the future. Illuminists and New Age utopians have been the catalyst for a number of visionary architectural projects in the past few decades. See, I told you. The first Millennium Foundation of the 1990s came up with its idea for a 60,000 resident spaceship community. Here's one here outside of Tucson. Notice the pyramidal triangles and other symbolic features. So here's the problem with all this. Everybody's going to have one of two choices. Worship the Lucifer god, take the mark of the beast, and get on your knees and pray to the Zionist Jewish descendant of David as the living God. Or not agree and have your head taken off. Don't become a resistor. And get murdered, get killed. That's what they say they're going to do. But you're going to learn more about that in my Series 66. The Brotherhood of Angels. Do spirit entities guide occult architects and builders? So they are communicating with the dark side. Deceased beings, or maybe beings that never lived at all. And the New Age figures into this prominently. And you've seen pictures like this. J.J. Hertag in the Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, teachers that light beings or spirit entities from the heavenly realms transmit light images or pictographs into the minds of receptive human subjects through the individual's third eye region on the forehead. So they want separation of church and state. But yet, we're going to communicate with these spiritual beings and have an eye on the dollar bill and the pyramid, all their symbolism. And on all of our, spit it out, Rick, drink some water. On all of our federal buildings, you can see the all-seeing eye, or the same symbol on a U.S. dollar bill on the post office buildings, federal buildings. This picture images what he calls light messages, create the pyramidal focus in the brain, and programs the Gnostic knowledge illuminist architects. So if you don't go along with this new religion, and you still want to stick with Jesus and God and whatever else, they say you don't have any place on this planet. How many people are going to go along with this? Obviously quite a few, because they've had plenty of time to train them since they were children, even with the cartoons. At the apex of the Grand Central Terminal is this sculpture showcasing Mercury, or Hermes, Greek god of transportation, but also of magic. So Grand Central Terminal in New York, it's got this thing on the roof. Alright, gets even more crazier. Of course, we know about the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., the big obelisk, which they've been doing work on the top of this thing. Apparently you can take an elevator to the top. I suspect, I'm just guessing here, they got windows and everything, and that they're putting in some kind of projection camera systems. So maybe when they do Project Bluebeam, or when they bring about this New World Order, remember, they're going to be announcing a God on Earth. Think of how tremendous that's going to be for everybody to try to take. And so many people who will embrace it after they've been pushed further than we've been pushed now. People will demand for this new God, look for something in the future. But it's all going to be a deception, in my opinion, and many others. 2666 monuments, Witch's Brew, Spirit of Houston. So these things are 6,660 inches tall. This was in Houston. And apparently the Washington Monument is also 6,660 inches tall. That's what it says here. 555 feet, or 6,660 inches. That number being the supreme occult numerological significance. You think it's coincidence? Well, my battery died on my camera. Looks like I fell off the cliff there. It just went beep beep. So I'd just like to finish up on this book and just say a few short things. One, support Texe Marrs. Go see his website. CDs, videos, books. He's got some new ones out. But just think about this stuff. Here's a dragon consuming a man. Wall painting from a Greek Orthodox monastery. We know the dragon goes back in the Bible. Snake giving the apple to Adam and Eve. It's a man in the snake's mouth. Dragon on a large papal crest at the Vatican Museum. So with Jade Helm dispersing troops across the country, FEMA camps, guillotines shipped to military bases and FEMA camps, as per probably military bases, as per truck drivers. Look on YouTube. And, you know, what's true, what's not true. But I think what's prudent is that people should look into this stuff and be prepared if something huge is going to happen, and know what to do and what's going on if something happens. So Solomon's temple in Israel, when they destroyed it the last time, Stuff that's in this book. Hope I'm getting that up there. I can't see sometimes. 7 Wonders of the Ancient World. 7 Ancient Wonders. Interesting stuff in this book. And it seems to indicate, as we all know, there are many ancient monuments all over the world. And there was a great flood. All the Hopi Indians and other native citizens in all the countries of the world talked about the flood. So there was a culture or beings, human, that were on this earth before this time. And it seems this time goes around 4,000 years. And that would be, Jesus was born at the beginning of the age of Pisces, and we're now entering the age of Aquarius. So it's a new age. And with Jesus, believing in him is a promise from God that you can avoid this insanity that's coming. So that seems like a very inexpensive ticket, a way out, for one thing. And so one needs to ponder those things. And the powers that be that are building all these monuments and pyramidal type structures, and the one over there in the Dominican Republic that looks like it's designed for beheadings, and the cells inside that were described. Crazy. I'm just looking here, see if there's anything else. So even unveiling the Great Pyramid in 1993 in Las Vegas. So they're getting ready for something. This new world order, this new one world religion. They're causing chaos in Ferguson and other places. And they got these beings. Cleveland, Ohio. I guess you got this building here. Very fascinating book. An androgynous version of Mercury holding a torch. So you got a half man, half woman Mercury, and you wonder what the gay movement is all about when only 2% of the planet is gay or less, and they're forcing it on 98% of the rest of us. But these gods, some of them are androgynous. What's with that? The devil's androgynous. And if my studies prior to me ever getting involved in this research 10, 11 years ago, I was reading about Atlantis, and I've always been a student of knowledge. But apparently when the continents of Atlantis were sinking, a lot of the Atlanteans moved to the Egypt area, and there was a huge battle going on between the Egyptians and the newly arrived Atlanteans. Apparently they were into cloning and creating different types of beings, sex slaves, worker slaves, creatures. And the Egyptians were horrified and didn't like it. They had kind of a war going on. And finally they resolved their differences, and the Atlanteans stopped it. But the story goes, that's why they had the Great Flood. God created it, because they had so polluted humanity. And in mythology, we know the half horse, half man, and all these other creatures, mythology. Is that what happened? Were they messing with the DNA? Like we have Monsanto, which is 666 in a numerology calculator, messing with our food, knowing that it's bad for us. And the Georgia USA Guidestones saying they want 500 million people, so 6 billion got to die. And then there's sky spraying and HARP systems strategically located all over the world. Is there a bad day coming? They got all those fear-mongering on the internet, pole shift, Planet X, Nibiru, asteroid gonna hit Earth. Many other things. Global warming, climate change. There's so many I can't remember. They got that fear-mongering going on. Nuclear threat of war, EMP pulse. So if I sit here for a while, I can keep coming up with more. Ebola, Australian antigen, AIDS. So what, they got so many resources to draw on. Project Bluebeam, where everybody looks up and thinks they see Jesus. An incoming God is going to save the planet. And some people are going to accept it. And apparently those who don't are going to have a bad day in Dominican Republic, where they lop off the heads, or maybe in some city near you where they have a FEMA camp or a military base. I'm just looking to see if there's any more pictures I want to look at. Biltmore's impressive exterior boasts these repugnant gargoyles. We got these in my town on some of the buildings. Gargoyles on the buildings. What's with that? So yeah, this is a great book. This is Lord Rothschild's house. Look at the beings in his courtyard. Seems like he's one of the main banksters behind this, the leader of the Illuminati. Goes all the way back to World War I and World War II, that family. Some interesting pictures in here. So what is reality? Well, I know what they tell us they're going to do. Well, this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. Look at this creature. It's not all easy holding a big book like this up. Here's some more. You spend some time looking at these pictures. Oh yeah, here's something good to know. Washington, D.C. has street plans a lot of people are aware of that. Pentagrams, five-pointed star, gigantic owl. You think that's an accident? Just a coincidence? Not on your life, just like it's named Columbia. That's a goddess. And the Capitol building, the White House. Guess they got one over there in England, looks just like it. George Washington, the Freemasons have made him to be a god. Said he was a Freemason. So there you have it. That's all I'm going to do here. A lot of it's tied to the Egyptian hieroglyphics. So now I'm just going to do a little bit out of the Nexus magazine. Just thought I'd finish this off. Go buy this book or one of Texe Marrs' other books or CDs or videos. I've been watching him this morning. Look up Henry Makow, M-A-K-O-W, and Texe Marrs. And the two videos they discussed about Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, were very interesting conversations to listen to between those two guys. Well, it's time to do a review from another article on the Nexus magazine. It's interesting to be alive in August 2015. Things have been getting crazier and crazier and have been going on so long. We are in the unique position to look back in history and see what they said. What's it been, since 2001? 14 years? Almost? And what kind of planning were they doing before 2001, when they had 911? And the year 2000, 2006, 2007. Were they gearing up for this collapse of the United States, the world? The stock market system? Were they preparing for the New World Order, the New Age? Getting rid of Jesus, God, Christianity, and replacing it with a satanic, Luciferic religion? Has it all been planned? Is all this real? So anyways, with that said, I have a 2009 issue, March, April, volume 16, number 2, Nexus magazine. And I've been going through the Nexus magazines just looking for evidence in history about the preparedness of what they're doing today, which they would like everybody to believe is going to be a natural occurrence. Not on your life. They've been destroying the food supply, the water supply, the economy, sky spraying the air, the people's health, animals, bees, bugs, Fukushima polluting the whole ocean. Do we have people so stupid that they plan and put nuclear power plants right on the water? Something wrong here. There's so much planning, so much intent. From 100 years ago, H.G. Wells. 150 years ago, 40 years ago, Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma, the leader of the Freemasonic lodges, which Lucifer is their god. I mean, everything has to do with rebuilding King Solomon's temple and making the evil Jewish folks Zionists, not the good Jewish folks, who have been writing books and protesting, trying to warn the rest of us. It's a monumental task to try to figure this out. Maybe my videos have been helping a little bit. So with that said, on page 11, martial law, financial bailouts, and war. And again, this was in 2009, so that would have been right after the 2008 bailouts. And this is 2015. So let's just see where we went from there and try to find out if everything has been planned. And if it has been planned and they're spending all this money and they're continuing the sky spray, amongst many other things, taking the nations down in the Middle East, continuing to kill them. Ukraine, the battle is increasing between Ukraine and Russia. Europe, Spain going down, maybe Ireland, Germany up in arms about the immigrants, Greece up in arms on the islands about the immigrants, the economy getting worse in the United States, laws prohibiting free speech, gag orders. I could go on here for a while with all this craziness, threatening the people with fear of Yellowstone blowing, an asteroid hitting, Planet X coming, Planet Nibiru, the Pope coming in September to the United Nations meeting, as a lot of people suspect something monumental is going to happen. They call something called a Shemitah year that has something to do with the Jewish calendar ritual. Every 7 years, they erase all the depth. Just so many warnings. Stock market in China going down right now, causing trillions of dollars of loss. People freaking out, and they're running out of silver to sell people. Press release today is America has no grain reserves. Another press release last week, emergency food supply companies are running out. Crazy, you think? Alright, well, let me get to reading this article. The U.S. Treasury's financial bailout. It is becoming clear that the bailout measures of late 2008 may have consequences at least as grave for an open society as the responses of 9/11 in 2001. Many members of the U.S. Congress felt coerced into voting against their inclination, and the normal procedures for orderly consideration in a bill were dispensed with. So voting against their own inclinations and the normal procedures for orderly consideration of a bill were dispensed of. So they immediately, emergency, got the bill passed to do the bailout money. And they, if you remember back then, they threatened that the whole world would collapse. And the same thing with George Bush after 9/11, threatening that anybody who wasn't for us or against us. And the wars in the Middle East proceeded. And so that's what they're doing. They like to come up with a huge emergency so that they can corral everybody and take everybody's resources, money, freedom, and even health and life. There was one article, two articles I was reading today. You're not even going to believe this. Look up gender bender. They were proposing in some school that the boys would come to school and dress as girls, and the girls could come dressed as boys. Gender bender in the public school system. And that was tagged to another article that apparently the LBG group, whatever it is proposing some legislation to forbid teachers from calling boys boys and girls girls, because it's offensive to transgendered people or whatever else, and they want to just call them friends or students, but no calling boys boys or girls girls. And some people think I'm crazy for making these videos when the people want to stop calling boys boys and girls girls. I think we're living in some very weird times. Alright, so they, back after the 2001 9/11, Congress felt coerced and against their own inclinations, their own intuition, and the normal procedures were dispensed with. And of course everybody was threatened with world collapse. So who is doing these threats? Who's orchestrating this little parade to the doom of Earth? Who? Only one entity I can think of, and that's the satanic, luciferic God leading all his followers. As I keep saying, these Zionists, Jesuits, Illuminati, high-level Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and Church of Satan, Hollywood, banksters, and a bunch of elitists in the world, all following this new age religion and dragging millions and maybe billions of other people into the new age religion, saying Christianity is bad and evil, Islam is bad and evil, which is 2/3 of the world. The phone ringeth. Alright, I'm 10 minutes into this video and I haven't even got anywhere. The excuse for bypassing normal legislation procedures was the existence of an emergency. But one of the most reprehensible features of the legislation is that it allowed Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson to permit bailed out institutions to use public money for exorbitant salaries and bonuses. Was inserted by Paulson after the immediate crisis had passed. So they wanted to pay off all these people huge amounts of monies to do their bidding with all this bailout money. And I have a belief, and I think it's substantiated by the evidence. Why did they need all those billions of dollars back then in 2008? I suspect it was to build this big machine for the New World Order arming police departments, fighting the wars, computer technologies, Jade Helm, monitoring everybody. They needed all that money to continue on moving forward to destroy much of the world and enslave most of the people. As per the Bible here, come on. Let's just call it what it is. Luciferianism. A satanic takeover. Well, let's read the article and you can decide. Welch and other members of Congress were enraged by news that banks were getting taxpayer-funded bailouts and are still paying exorbitant salaries and bonuses and other benefits. Senator Charles Schumer, Democrat in New York, questioned allowing banks that accept bailout bucks to continue paying dividends on their common stock. So the banks were going under, had to get bailout money from the public, you and me, which we owe. They say the United States owes $18 trillion. And they put that on the shoulders of the U.S. citizens. And then they were continuing to pay dividends to the stockholders, plus pay exorbitant salaries and bonuses to the CEOs and high-level bank employees. Even more reprehensible is that since the bailouts, Paulson and the Treasury Department have refused to provide details of the troubled assets relief program spending of hundreds of billions of dollars. And the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has refused to provide information about its own bailout using government-backed loans that amounted to trillions. This lack of transparency has been challenged by Fox TV in an FOIA suit against the Treasury Department and by Bloomberg News in a suit against the Fed. The financial bailout legislation of September 2008 was only passed after members of both congressional houses were warned that failure to act would threaten civil unrest in the imposition of martial law. So we're this close away to martial law right now, they say, in 2015. So that 7 or 8 years later, 7 years later, and they've been gearing up and staffing up police departments for 7 years with all this money and all their political power. They were worried about it then as a threat, and they've been preparing for it ever since as an inevitable situation that's going to happen. The U.S. Army's new role, given the threats of martial law, were used to get this reprehensible bailout legislation passed. It is entirely appropriate to link such talk to the Army's rapid moves to redefine its role in one of controlling the American people, not just protecting them. As I said before, there's a new world order, as George Bush mentioned, 20 years ago. Albert Pike, 130 years ago. H.G. Wells, 100 years ago. Many books I've gone over. They are pushing forward, and nothing will stand in their way. We can see that coming. It is entirely appropriate to link such talk to the Army's rapid movements, controlling the American people, not just protecting them. In a constitutional, politely based on balance of power, polity-based of power, we see emergence of a radical new military power that is as yet completely unbalanced. This new role of the Army is not wholly unprecedented. The U.S. military has been training troops and police and civil disturbances planning for the last 3 decades, 30 years. The Master Plan, Department of Defense Civil Disturbance Plan 55-2, or the Operation Garden Plot. There's a heck of a name, Operation Garden Plot. Now who do you suppose they're going to bury? If you go on YouTube and check out Jade Helm, you'll find out that there are backhoes and bulldozers, and apparently the military involved with Jade Helm, digging huge ponds. garden plot come to mind? Do they plan on filling these big holes with people? Operation Garden Plot was developed in 1968 in response to major protests and disturbances of the 1960s. Well, I know that the 1960s and 70s, with the marijuana and other drugs, hippie movement, and it's also going on in Europe, was part of the New Age plan, New World Order plan. They had to get all the young people and everybody into free love and not paying attention and growing up to be conservative young men and women with morals and integrity and character, but rather free love and dancing through the streets, using drugs and stepping out. Crazy. But on January 19th, 2001, on the last day of Clinton administration, the U.S. Army proclaimed a new and permanent Community of Operations, COOP, C-O-O-P program. It encapsulated its difference from the preceding externally oriented Army Survival, Recovery and Reconstitution System, ASRRS. So this is 2001. That they were worried about the Army survival. And the labels, you have to remember, it's really not the Army survival. It's the elite's control of survival and control of the system when it does go into chaos and anarchy. And then they proceed with their drones and their Australian antigen, Ebola plagues maybe. HARP microwave transmitters located everywhere. I suppose they could just microwave people to death. And it's crazy. The bullets, the hollow points they've been buying, even the ones with exploding shrapnel when they hit you. Doesn't just go through your body and out the back. On impact, the shrapnel, the bullet actually is designed to peel away. It's right. It's psychopathically insane. The people who think up these things. So, 1980s, the threat of a massive nuclear laydown on Conus, which is the continental USA, as a result of a confrontation with the Soviet Union. I'm not reading everything. I just thought it would be important with this Texe Marrs book review and some of his newsletters over the last 10 years and his other book of all the buildings and monuments being built all over the world, and have been built all over the world, for this new satanic Luciferian religion, New Age. And believe me, I'm not everybody involved, including me, knowing how to use a pendulum to find water and higher consciousness. Remember, Jesus was into healing. One guy was a leper and said, "Please heal me," and Jesus healed the leper. Another guy had a lame hand and Jesus healed his hand. If you look in the Bible, the book of Mark, St. Mark, all you have to do is read the first 3 pages of the book St. Mark in the Bible, in the New Testament, and you'll see all this stuff that apparently, if all this is New Age, Jesus was into the New Age of healing. And people, when Jesus would approach them, would angrily say, "What are you doing here?" As if the demon inside the person recognized Jesus. And Jesus would say, "Get out of that person's body." I'm paraphrasing. Read the first 3 pages of St. Mark in the New Testament. And the demonic being would leave that person, and the person would become a normal person. And if you look at those pictures of those guys who, Batman movie shootings, Sandy Hook, the guy who went into the church with the black people and shot them, or Miley Cyrus, you can almost see that they're possessed by something. And there's a book written about that of a lot of the people in Hollywood. Gene Roddenberry would go into trances to get the storyline for Star Trek. And if you go back and watch the old Star Trek shows, you can see that it's right out of the New Age and the occult and possession and all that stuff. So Gene Roddenberry was getting it from in his trances from the other side. as Nikola Tesla went on stage and said, hey, I'm really not a genius. I would get images and voices and dreams and come up with these things. It was some other entities, and his handlers would run up there and pull him off the stage to shut him up. I've discovered a lot in my research, and we're going to go over more books focusing in on these issues. And after we get through with this planned Texe Marrs and Jordan Maxwell, and proving that there is this relationship between the Freemasonic lodges, Illuminati, and Satanism, Luciferianism, and the Vatican, and the Pope, and the Jesuits, and the Zionists, Rosicrucians, Knights of Malta, Heritage Foundation, Club of Rome, I could go on and on and on, Hollywood, banksters, crazy. To emphasize that Army continuity of operations, planning is now focused on the full all hazards threat spectrum. The name ASRR has been replaced by a more generic title, Continuity of Operations COOP Program. Just saying, this thing's been going on for quite a while. Jade Helm, this is not the first time. And they do want to rid the people of a huge amount of the population. They know to bring about the New World Order, they gotta burn everything down, hence called the Phoenix Rising. The Phoenix rises from the ashes after they burn the old Phoenix. If you don't know the story, look up the bird Phoenix. This document embroiled the secret continuity of government, COG planning, conducted secretly by Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and others through the 1980s and 1990s. This planning was initially for continuity measures in the event of a nuclear attack, but soon called for suspension of the Constitution. Not just after a nuclear war. And the Cold War, we're finding out now, was a big hoax, like the moon landings. They did all that to get all this power and equipment and military spending approved. So after World War II, we can say, let's say 1950. So 50, 60 years, these people have been focused on this New World Order, duping we, the people of the United States and the world, of their money and their freedoms, and building this apparatus with underground cities and tunnels and everything. It's insane. They're planning our demise, our erasure from planet Earth, our death, in my opinion. This planning was initially for continuity measures in the event of a nuclear attack. Okay, but not just after a nuclear war, but for any national security emergency. This was defined in President Reagan's Executive Order 12656, 18 November 1988, as any occurrence, including natural disasters, military attack, technological emergency, and other emergency that seriously degrades or seriously threatens the national security of the United States. And remember, this magazine was 2009. And in the Protocols of Zion, it does say that they were going to continue this stuff year after year, confuse the people, put the people in fear, and it weakens the people. People get worn out, mentally deranged, sick and ill, death, dying, stress, and the strain on the economy and people who are running businesses is never ending. Then when the poor people can't get any money, the government wants to focus their attention on business owners and people with any money, trying to point the finger and blame them. When the government planned all this all along. And now if you speak bad, when I talk to government, I'm talking about the controllers, the politicians who are controlled by the United Nations. And a lot of politicians have come forward with this knowledge, hence where I get a lot of it from. There's whistleblowers, and a lot of whistleblowers die. A lot of biologists have died recently. Astronomers. scientists, doctors who are investigating vaccines, banks, managers and operators. A lot of military leaders have been fired from their jobs or let go. Somebody is doing a big purge of people in the know. In like fashion, Army Regulation AR 500-3 clarified that there was a plan for the execution of mission-essential functions without unacceptable interruption during the national security or domestic emergency. So if they crash the stock market today, next week, they have an unacceptable interruption. So no human being, you or I, cannot declare that this, we know that they caused whatever is going to happen, but if we speak up, we're going to be a terrorist, an insurgent, an anti-government belligerent, or a threat to national security. Is that the way it is? Alright, Rumsfeld, who as a private citizen has helped author the COG, so he helped as a private citizen, planning promptly signed as Secretary of Defense. So he planned it as a private citizen, and as Secretary of Defense, he signed the revised AR 500-3. 8 months later, on 9/11, Cheney and Rumsfeld implemented COG, continuity of government, a significant event of which we still know next to nothing. So is continuity of government still in force? Is there some kind of martial law in force? Is that why we see a gold fringe on the USA flag when the president speaks and at other meetings? I've had people threaten me with death on the comment section of my comments when I write on press releases for mentioning the golden fringe on the flag. What's with that all about? To implement warrantless surveillance and detention, 1980s, of large numbers of civilians, and that in January 2002, the Pentagon submitted a proposal for deploying troops on American streets. This is 2002. And this is 2015 that they are actually doing it. So they are moving forward and upward. And we in the economy are moving downward. Alright, then in April 2002, Department of Defense officials implemented a plan for domestic U.S. military operations by creating a new U.S. Northern Command, U.S. NORTHCOM, for continental USA. Deep events and party changes in the White House. It is worth noticing that ever since the 1950s, dubious events of unpublic variety, which I call deep events, have marked the last months before a change of party at the White House. These deep events have tended to constrain an incoming president if the incomer is a Democrat. Alternately, to pave the way for an incoming president if he is a Republican. Both the financial bailout extorted from Congress and the escalated preparations for martial law can be seen as transitory events of category. Moving on. Intensive, quiet preparations for martial law. Let us deal first with the preparations for martial law. On 30 September 2008, the Army Times announced the redeployment of an active U.S. Army Brigade combat team from Iraq to America in a new mission that may become a permanent part of the active Army. 2008 now. The 3rd Infantry Divisions. Now they're training for the same mission with a twist. At home. Alright, moving on. And I'm not reading everything, but it seems like it. And we'll give credit what credit would due here. I'll mention the authors of this report. Alright, beginning October 1, for 12 months, the 1st BCT will be under the day-to-day command control of the U.S. Army North and the Army Service Component of Northern Command as an on-call federal response force for natural and man-made emergencies and disasters, including terrorist attacks. And a lot of us know the terror attacks are not us people. They have these mercenaries, guerrillas, or paid people, like the CIA fabricated Al-Qaeda or ISIS, or people under MK Ultra mind control, or whatever. Sandy Hook, it's false flags. It's an intentionally created event. Normal people like me and other people in cities don't do terrorist attacks. Show me one case in the United States. Every picture we see, these people look like they're zombies. Young men or people on drugs, or just some kind of weirdness going on behind the scenes on these events. After 1st BCT finishes its dwell time mission, expectations are that another, as yet unnamed active duty brigade will take over and that the mission will be a permanent one. This may be called upon to help with civil unrest and crowd control. Back in 2008, so they're increasingly believing that we citizens are the threat to national security. And I guess if they're more like over there with Israel, taking the Palestinians' land and killing them, they think the Palestinians are a threat, and I would think that they would be. If you were killing people in any particular country or city or town, they might rise up and try to defend themselves. Then they would be a terrorist, an insurgent, an anti-government belligerent, a threat to national security. So I guess what they would like is for people to not defend themselves, or their religion, Christianity, or Islam, or whatever you might be. And when they start microchipping people, stand in line and hold out your hand, or let them put it on your forehead. Don't resist. You could be deemed a terrorist or an insurgent. Don't stock up on food. You'll be a hoarder. Doesn't make sense except from the twisted mind of evil people. This announcement, followed by 2 weeks of talk of civil unrest and martial law, was that used to panic Congress into passing Paulson's bailout legislation. So here we go. Not just us people under threat, but the people in Congress that we elect to go there, supposedly, were 2 weeks of talk of civil unrest and martial law that was used to panic Congress into passing Paulson's bailout legislation. So even our government leaders are under threat by these people. Goes that big. Goes all the way to the United Nations. Goes all the way to the Jesuits and Zionists and others that are into the communism, Luciferic, New One World Order religion. Even the Pope is talking about it. And this is supposed to be a big meeting in Philadelphia in September 2015, next month. And there's a lot of rumors on the YouTube videos and websites and press releases, alternate news, that this could be the big one. Armageddon, United States under martial law, Europe crashing down, all those countries, China crashing with the stock market. This announcement followed by 2 weeks of talk of civil unrest. All right, moving on. While the announcing position of an active brigade combat team on U.S. soil anticipated civil unrest in 2008, such as might result from the bailout legislation, billions taken from the taxpayers to these banksters who are financing the New World Order and New Age activities. So we paid for this stuff, taking over the Middle East and a lot of other places all over the world, which they are blaming on global warming or climate change or environmental disaster or droughts. Just goes on and on and on with their lies and deceptions. But read the Protocols of Zion. Read the report from Iron Mountain. Read Rabbi Marvin Anton. Read Henry Mackay, PhD Jewish-Canadian author. Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. Jordan Maxwell, Texe Marrs, these books I'm going over. It just keeps on reinforcing the evidence here, what we're talking about. That's why I get these different sources of material and share them on my videos. Then according to the agency France Presse, I guess that's a French newspaper, on 17 December 2008, the U.S. Northern Command Chief, General Renault, announced that the U.S. military plans to mobilize thousands of troops to protect Washington against potential terrorist attacks during the inauguration of President-elect Barack Obama. See, what do they think of us? The U.S. Army War College has also raised the possibility of the U.S. Army being used to control civil unrest. Posse Comitatus. Isn't it illegal for the U.S. military to be policing the USA people? But they don't care about the Constitution or laws. A new report by the U.S. Army War College talks about the possibility of Pentagon resources and troops being used should the economic crisis lead to civil unrest. So if they shut down the interstate systems, shut down the food supply, shut down the water, shut down the electricity with an EMP, which they will have done, it's not going to be some boogeyman out of nowhere who does it, they will cause the event that will cause the civil unrest. Because they want civil unrest, the troops will be in place, and the killing will begin. Is that how it is? World-spread civil violence inside the United States would force the defense establishment to reorient priorities in extremis to defend basic domestic order and human security, said the War College report. The study says economic collapse, terrorism, and loss of legal order are among possible domestic shocks that might require military action within the U.S. And I have other books and documents that prove they're trying to take over the world with the USA New World Order, controlled again by the United Nations, the Zionists, the Jesuits, the Illuminati, the elitists, the banksters, Hollywood, high-level Freemasons, and other fraternal, secret school of Babylon, Lucifer's satanic entities, psychopathic crazies. They come up names for us like anti-government belligerents. Let's come up with a name for them, psychopathic crazies. It is clear that there has been a sustained move in the direction of martial law preparations. A sustained move in the direction of martial law preparations, which they will bring about. A trend that has been as continuous as it has been unheralded. It should concern all of us that the conference agreement includes language that subverts solid, long-standing posse comitatus statutes that limit the military's involvement in law enforcement, thereby making it easier for the president to declare martial law. This quiet agglomeration of military power has not just grown like topsy through inadvertence, it shows sustained intention, even if no one has made a public case of it. Now, this is not me who wrote this article back in 2009, talking about Dr. Peter Dale Scott, a former Canadian diplomat and former professor of English. His most recent book is A War Conspiracy book. JFK, 9/11, and the Deep Politics of War. There's more on his credentials here. So let's keep reading this article. No one should think that the crisis was unforeseen. This is Bush's administration protected predatory lending. See, they know how to, remember, they took over the Federal Reserve, the people who control Bushes and Obama and Clinton and Reagan, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and all those people belonging to the Illuminati, the banksters, the people who made a Balfour Agreement with England to get the Palestinians land, to start the state of Israel so they could build rebuild King Solomon's temple, to bring back this new religion where some descendant of David, King David, would take the throne and rule the world. Make no mistake, there's a huge connection between the New World Order and the new age of satanic world domination. That's my conclusion. And if you've been watching my videos, you can connect the dots. Look on the dollar bill. There's Horus is the all-seeing eye right there. The pyramid, Egyptian, right there. Back in February 2008, you're going to love this, Eliot Spitzer, in one of his last acts of governor of New York, warned about the impending crisis, 2008 now, created by predatory lending, and revealed that the Bush administration was blocking state efforts to deal with it. So they were setting the stage up for the stock market crash in 2008. Listen to this. Several years ago, State Attorney General and others involved in the consumer protection began to notice a marked increase in a range of predatory lending practices by mortgage lenders. Remember, these are banksters. And since they own the stock market, the Federal Reserve in 1913, they've crashed the system 8 or 9 or 10 times, taking all the money and wealth from the people that they allow them to build up over a period of time. This is their modus operandi. They do this over and over in countries all over the world. Where would we be today if it weren't for these satanic, Luciferian, Jesuit, Zionist, Illuminati, evil people? Oh my God, we'd have a paradise in the world. It is them who have been polluting and stealing and looting and murdering, destroying nations. Go down to South America, Central America. Peaceful villages with clear water are now little brick buildings with no septic systems, no windows, and no running water. They've turned the world into a slum. Check it out. And they plan to, as Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar. Look at what he said. I don't even have to repeat it. Benjamin Netanyahu and Fink's Bar. You'll find out what they plan on doing to the USA. Even though predatory lending was becoming a national problem, the Bush administration looked the other way and did nothing to protect American homeowners. You ever wonder where he ever got the money to go do all those wars in the Middle East? And all the people getting cheap loans and easy loans, and everybody was trying to buy a house. The people were being diverted, only to have it all taken away a few years later. Now they have the lowest home ownership, and at that time they had the highest level of home ownership. The people never saw it coming. Not only did the Bush administration do nothing to protect consumers, it embarked on an aggressive and unprecedented campaign to prevent states from protecting their residents from the very problems to which the federal government was turning a blind eye. I suspect from my investigation it was all planned. The administration accomplished this feat through an obscure federal treasury agency called the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, OCC. The OCC had been in existence since the Civil War. For 140 years, the OCC examined the books of national banks to make sure they were balanced. Now that would have been a good thing. But a few years ago, for the first time in its history, the OCC was used as a tool against consumers. In 2003, during the height of the predatory lending crisis, the OCC invoked a clause from an 1863 National Bank Act to issue formal opinions preempting all state predatory lending laws, thereby rendering them inoperative. The OCC also promulgated new rules that prevented states from enforcing any of their own consumer protection laws against national banks. The federal government's actions were so generous and unprecedented that all 50 state attorneys general and all 50 states banking superintendents actively fought the new rules. Did you hear what I just said? It was intentional. But the unanimous opposition of the 50 states did not deter or even slow the Bush administration in its goal of protecting the banks. This is what I'm talking about, the New World Order and martial law and destroying the nation and bringing forth the New World Order in the New Age. Just as all these attorney generals and superintendents and people couldn't deter the Bush administration, all of our efforts now won't deter them from destroying the country and bringing about the New Age and the New World Order. They are determined. Anyways, a number of banks, the OCC filed a federal lawsuit to stop the investigation. So some of the banks were trying to investigate Bush's, and remember, Bush wasn't making the decisions. There are people higher up in the Illuminati, heads of the Republican Party, Democratic Party. Eliot Spitzer, governor of New York, submitted his essay to the Washington Post on 13 February. If it had an impact, it was not one Spitzer had hoped for. We all know what happened to Spitzer. So he did the op-ed on 13 February. Less than a month later, March. On 10 March, the New York Times broke the story of Spitzer's encounter with a prostitute. So if he was seeing prostitutes, they knew about it all along, and they had a way to punish him. According to a 21 March Times story, on February 13th, the day Spitzer's op-ed went up in the Washington Post website, federal agents staked out his hotel in Washington. It is remarkable that the mainstream media found Spitzer's private life to be big news, but not his charges on Paulson's treasury. But not his charges that Paulson's treasury was prolonging the financial crisis, or the relation of these charges to the Spitzer's exposure. After Spitzer's op-ed was published, according to the journalist Greg Palast, 14 March, the Federal Reserve, for the first time in its history, loaned a selected number of banks $1/5 of $1 trillion to guarantee these banks mortgage-backed junk bonds. The deluge of public loot was an eye-popping windfall to the very banking predators who had brought 2 million families on the brink of foreclosure. Funding, so it's been millions more since then, funding the American empire. What are we to make of Spitzer's charge that the Bush administration interfered to preempt state laws against the predatory lending, and of the fact that the mainstream media did not report it? Well, the mainstream media is owned by these Zionist, Illuminati, banksters, and all the other names I could go on saying. But the persistence of Treasury obstruction thereafter, despite the unanimous opposition of all 50 states, and the continuing silence of the media about this disagreement, suggests that some broader policy intention may have been at stake. Some broader policy intention may have been at stake. The New World Order, the New Age, which are one and the same. The New World Order is the arm, the might, the weapon against the people to enforce the New Age. And apparently they're going to have this Lucifer, descendant of David, sit on the throne when they build the King Solomon's temple. And everybody has to get on a bended knee and swear allegiance. Or as President Bush Sr. said, all Americans will pledge their allegiance to the United Nations. Search that. I've shown you that. One is struck by the similarities with the savings and loan scandal, which was allowed to continue through the Reagan 1980s. I'm telling you, they do this thing over and over and over. long after it became apparent that deliberate bankruptcy was being used by unscrupulous profiteers to amass illegal fortunes at what was ultimately public expense. In the same way, the long drawn-out housing bubble, and particularly the derivative bubble that was floated upon it, allowed the Bush administration to help offset the trillion-dollar-plus cost of its Iraq misadventure by creating spurious securities that sold for hundreds of billions, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. In the long run, this was not a sustainable source of wealth for Americans' financial class, which is now suffering like everyone else from the consequent recession. But in the short run, the financial crisis and bailout made it possible for Bush to wage a costly war without experiencing a kind of debilitating inflation that was brought on by the Americans' Vietnam War. So it's creative financing, I guess you could call it, at the expense of the American people and their families. The trillion-dollar meltdown, in other words, can be rationalized as having helped finance the war in Iraq. When we turn to the martial law preparations, however, we find that they are being made in anticipation of civil unrest in the future. So if they could plan all that, we know that they're planning all this today. Why such intense preparations for this? If you've been watching my videos, you know why. There is a spiritual side to us. We are spiritual beings. And apparently there is a cosmic battle in the Bible. If you read St. Mark, like I said, the first 3 pages, those 3 pages in the Bible, St. Mark in the New Testament, you won't be able to help but sit back and go, oh my God, we're in trouble. People better wake up and read those 3 pages. I've never been much of a serious Bible reader. I always found it, I didn't understand most of it. St. Mark. You know, they have St. John, St. Peter, but let's go to St. Mark in the New Testament. Read the first 3 pages. You decide. I'll rest my case on it. But the planning for martial law in America dates back almost 3 decades, 30 years. They've been planning the New World Order. They've been putting this book publishers have been publishing these New Age books, some of them even by Lucas Trust, formerly Lucifer Trust, promoting this New Age, this ascending, spirit guides, masters, getting everybody, making it even illegal to talk about Jesus in the army. You get court-martialed. The New Age magazines by the Freemasons I went over during 1920, 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960. Apparently, the Masonic lodges and all those organizations are anti-Christian. Why is that? I suspect they're anti-religion, whatever country they're in, unless it's their satanic, Luciferic religion. So it dates back 3 decades, from the days of Ronald appointed Rumsfeld, Chaney, and others, to plan secretly for what was misleadingly called continuity of government. I love the words they come up with. People like me, they might call an anti-government belligerent. Or, what's another one? Somebody who supports Christianity and Jesus, you know? When you don't swear allegiance to the new religion, will they behead us? That's what's said. Concern about the 2008 recession could not have been on the minds then, right? Or on the minds of those who introduced the Army's Continuity of Operations program in 2001. They're planning for the crash and the demise of America and the world. A new world order means a new world order. Not part of it, all of it. They have to plan for that. That's my point of reading this whole article. It's all planned. And I think we can stop it. Nothing is written in stone. But one thing we do is have to wake up. Alright, Joint Chiefs of Staff Blueprint, Joint Vision 2020. endorsed 8 months earlier on May 30th, 2000. So in year 2000, they were planning Joint Vision 2020, 20 years into the future. The interest of Cheney and Rumsfeld on continuity of government planning, including planning for martial law, also envisioned full spectrum dominance. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm reading from this magazine article. That's why I'm going to go back and find more stuff. That's a neat point about it being in 2015 and having been researching this stuff for 11 years is I can go back and look at some of the research I was doing, and it supports everything. There's evidence of this plan in the historical documents in the last 10 years. And as they get closer and closer to the martial law crashing the system, whether it's an EMP, a food crisis, a faked asteroid, they can do that. With the HARP transmitters located all over the planet, like in a little pattern, can they turn them on like a motor and shift the planet intentionally? Isn't that how motors work? You look at a map and go, look up HARP, H-A-R-P, 2 A's, and images, and you'll see where they are. And if you know how a motor works with the windings and fields, if they turn them all on and sync them up, could that stronger magnetic field outweigh the actual magnetic field of the Earth and shift it? And then, would that cause not the oceans to spill and floods and earthquakes and chaos? Can they do that? What are they doing with CERN, the collider over there in Switzerland, Geneva? With the demonic being Shiva out front, and then with its logo is 666s. Crazy. Then they have that big projector of a goat on the Hoover Dam, and the Illuminati card games that showed all the other stuff like 911 and other things with the Hoover Dam on those cards, the Twin Towers on those Illuminati card games. What is it going to take to wake us up? One thing is, go open the Bible to the New Testament and read the first 3 pages of Mark, St. Mark. I went to Catholic school, catechism, and I was, when the bishop slapped me, that's what they do when they go to catechism and they anoint you or something, and he named me Mark. And that was always my favorite saint in the New Testament, because I was renamed Mark on my confirmation. But since then I've steered away from the Catholic Church for obvious reasons. Take a little investigation of all the historic things the popes have done, and the crusades through to the Middle East, and the ones down there to South America, stealing all the gold and killing all the natives everywhere they went. Horrific, in the name of Jesus. If you read the first 3 pages of Mark, you will see that was not what Jesus would have done. You know the old saying, what would Jesus do? He would not have done that. Project for a New American Century, PNAC, P-N-A-C. Almost done here. To increase defense spending so as to establish America's military presence throughout the world as an unchallengeable power. This would entail permanent U.S. forces in Central as well as in East Asia, even after the disappearance of Saddam Hussein. Now this is unsustainable. If there's an unsustainable thing going on in this world, it's the U.S. trying to be a world-dominating power, which is really not the U.S., us citizens. It's our bought and paid for leaders, controlled by these Zionist Jewish folks, Jesuits, the Vatican, the Illuminati, the banksters and the elites, in the pursuit of the New Age, where they're going to have a descendant of King David sit on the throne in Jerusalem and rule the world, and the people who don't pledge allegiance and swear to be slaves to this new king lose their heads. What's it going to take for them to get us there? Probably an insane incident, or maybe 2 or 3 things. Could they start putting some kind of plague in that sky spraying powder today or tomorrow? Could they turn on HAARP and cause earthquakes, meander a fault, Yellowstone to blow up? China losing trillions. Could they start World War I? Could there be some selected nukes in selected cities? Seems they have lots of choices they're using on the fear-mongering news day after day, on the YouTube videos. Highly creative. They got the one now about the flat earthers, and I've been paying attention to those, and if I were to give anybody any advice, those videos are clear indications of propaganda. They want to divert your attention. They're bought and paid for. They're quite extraordinary videos, convincing if you're not smart enough to pay attention. Just like the new moon landing. Convincing if you're not paying attention. 911. Convincing if you're not paying attention. The New Age. Gender bender I talked about. Where the boys, per the advice of the teacher, could dress up as girls and come to school. And the girls could dress up as boys. And then with the LBG, whatever it is, organization, in the news yesterday, saying that they're pushing for some kind of agenda to have the teachers and the school systems not call boys boys and girls girls. In short, PNAC's program was a blueprint for a permanent overseas American empire, a project the authors recognize would not be easily accepted by an American democracy. The document admitted the process of transformation is likely to be a long one. Absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor. Well, 911 kicked off that football game. Repeating the mistakes in history, progressive societies in this era, usually democracies, tend to expand their presence beyond their geographic boundaries. This expanded presence calls for new institutions, usually like the CIA, free from democratic accountability. The secretion of unaccountable power in what I have elsewhere called the deep state disrupts the public state system of checks and balances, which is the underpinning of sane, deliberative policy. But because the dialectic just described, what we see is just exact opposite. Evolution towards foolish and sometimes disastrous engagements. When Britain became more democratic in the late 19th century, that would have been 1880 or something, it also initiated the Boer War, a war very suited to the private imperial needs of Cecil Rhodes, but irrelevant, if not deleterious, to the interest of the British people. So it was a disaster for the British people. Hitler's dreams of a Third Reich entailed a doomed repeat of Napoleon's venture into the heart of Russia, suited the needs of the German industrialists who had financed the Nazis. That would have been all the banksters and people we talk about today. For over a half century now, beginning with Vietnam, unaccountable forces have been maneuvering America into unsustainable adventures on the Asian mainland. We now know that President Kennedy did not intend ever to commit U.S. troops to Vietnam, but the fatal planning to expand Vietnam War north of the 17th parallel was authorized in the last week of his aborted presidency, probably without his being aware. So a week before he died, somebody was already making decisions. Let's see, last week of his aborted presidency. Yet his national security advisor, Jimmy Carter now, Carter was determined to reduce the size and frequency of the CIA, why am I saying that? CIA covert operations. So Jimmy Carter was determined to reduce the size and frequency of CIA covert operations. Yet his national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, however you say that, initiated maneuvers in Afghanistan that led to the largest CIA covert operation, and in my view, one of the most disastrous, I'm using my word, of all time, deleterious, however you say that word he used, Our archival historians have not yet fully understood either paradox or the forces behind them. As the philosopher George Santayana famously observed, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And here's who the author is. I hope when I read that, I hope I made my point, is everything that has happened, is going to happen, is happening, is all planned by these people, knowing that we the people wouldn't go along. So they will create these situations like 9/11, Sandy Hook. And God forbid how horrible could they do it. You know, controlling the weather, causing the drought in California, using the HAARP system to blow Yellowstone, loosening some plague into the atmosphere, creating World War III. Wake up on next Monday and swarms of foreign troops are coming in on all borders. And probably troops will already be in place in most of our cities, sitting there right now as a secret army waiting to be activated. That's what's said. I'm not making that up. Just look up on YouTube. Foreign troops in the United States. Foreign activity, military troops activities in the United States. Some cities, they say, there's so many Russians you can't help but miss them. And they're very cold-hearted, they're not very friendly, and they don't like them. Chinese troops have been said to be massing in the Mexico military training. We don't know because they don't tell us. But if we do our homework, we can see that a lot of the stuff is being planned for the New World Order, which is married to the New Age, which is something all biblical. And it is something to do with worshiping the devil, the mark of the beast, which a lot of people don't want to believe. I don't blame them. I don't want to believe. But somebody, and I'm not the only one by any means, I'm just a little guy, but somewhere we have to stand up and wake up and take responsibility for being human. And go read the first 3 pages of St. Mark in the New Testament and decide for yourself what kind of guy Jesus was. What did he say about his Father, God? Thank you for watching my videos. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Rick Miracle reporting.